Hi, everybody. I think we're live.
We are live. Yay.
Yes, sweet. All right. So welcome to our Ask a Puppeteer online panel led by me, Abby, and
me, Tracy.
Yes. So we are both graduating puppet arts students. We're graduating tomorrow. That's kind of crazy to think about. I am in the MFA program and Tracy is in the BFA program. So I think we cover the whole spectrum of the puppet art students.
Yeah.
So I think today we are going to answer some questions that we have seen people ask us before in the comments, or just questions that people have asked us in real life because they don't seem to know. And we're also going to be taking your comments and questions. So if you have any questions or comments that come to you at any point during our panel, please type those into the comments and we will answer them as we're talking about things today. Tracy, would you like to start with our first question?
Sure. So our first main question, one that we get at the museum all the time, in person, online, everywhere, is what do you end up doing with a puppetry degree?
Oh yes, the dreaded.
I think as a soon-to-be graduate, it's always a little bit scary of a question because it's, oh no, what am I personally going to be doing after school? And I don't 100% know yet, but I do know that there are tons of different options, fields, dozens of different venues I can go into. The most common is you'll find a group of puppeteers who will sort of take a tour circuit and then they'll go around from place to place in either like a region or in a specific state. In more current cases, online tours, and they'll go and perform a show at schools, at libraries, at puppet theaters, plenty of places.
Mm-hmm.
There's also a lot of television work that you can get and working for more corporate companies building animatronics for like amusement parks and things, which I think Abby can speak a bit more to.
That falls into puppetry, which is something I don't think that people often realize is that the scope of puppetry. So maybe I'll answer that question as well to kind of talk about more careers, but the scope of puppetry covers a lot more than people realize. I think many people in my life came to me and they either thought of marionettes or string puppets, or they thought of like the Muppets. And they thought of one or the other and they couldn't imagine anything else in that zone. And so they thought, which one do you want to do? And the answer is there's way more than that, of course. So of course, there is TV puppetry work, like you said. Of course, there's commercials, like commercials use a lot of puppets. I think anybody can think of, I'm from Pennsylvania and we have the Pennsylvania Lottery has a puppet that's a groundhog in every single commercial. The Travelocity owl is a puppet, or I think that's Travelocity. Like there are a lot of commercial companies that are doing these things. Bob's Furniture, which Tracy knows really well, he is a puppet. So there's a lot in that scope. There's not just Muppets. Movies, of course, there's a lot of movies that utilize puppets. Going into like Broadway and theatrical shows, you could work at a theater, you could be performing not just puppet-centric shows. Like I think everybody thinks of Avenue Q first, but there's a lot of shows that involve puppetry maybe in ways that you don't think of. So the King Kong that just opened up recently, King Kong is a puppet. They didn't hire a real gorilla to do that. There's also, of course, animatronics fall under puppetry. So it's a big scope of inanimate objects that we're animating, is sort of that loose puppet definition that I like to use, and I think other people at the Ballard do as well. So animatronics and theme parks fall onto that. Thinking about what else here. Oh, stop motion. Of course, stop motion, which you just did a workshop on.
Oh, yeah.
So stop motion falls under puppetry as well. So there's a lot of different things. I think it's cool because even if you don't have a job, like you said, you really could create a show and kind of pitch it yourself and tour around and find theaters that are willing to book you. But it's a lot larger of a scope than I think people usually think of, you know. So, but we're happy to answer more. Also, I don't know what I'm doing after this too. I think both of us are equally impacted by everything closing. So I'm not 100% sure yet personally, but I know what things I'm interested in and the things that I'm going to be pursuing. So go from there, right?
Oh yeah.
I'm looking at my list. What else did people ask us? So I do want to ask, just so that the people out there get to know us a little bit better, because I think people probably recognize both of us at this point from the many workshops we've done online. But I think that it is cool to look and sort of think about us as puppet artists. So Tracy, I want to ask you, why did you get into puppetry, or how did you get into puppetry?
Oh, that's another common question that I always love answering. Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of fun.
So we have to take a little bit of a backstory into my personal life, obviously. When I was in high school, I was really into theater, and I ended up going to, I don't know how many of you know Connecticut, but there's sort of this like Connecticut theater festival that a bunch of different high schools go to every year. And my freshman year, I got to go to one at E.O. Smith, which is the high school across the street from UCONN. So since it was all these theater kids, they had like a UCONN puppet set up and this whole little stand that was like, UCONN Puppetry Program, come join, da 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 da, all the basic advertising. So I took a little flyer from that and I took it home, and some of my different teachers and friends were like, yeah, you should look into this. It would be cool. And the more I looked into it, the more I realized I couldn't really think of a reason not to do it. So that actually led me to do a summer program for high school students that took me to UConn, took me to the UConn Puppet Arts Program, and I got to sort of meet people there and ask a lot of questions. And then I was really head over heels for it and knew that like puppetry was the thing I have to do.
Oh, I love that.
Oh, thanks. What about you, Abby?
I knew less about puppetry before I came here. I had graduated from Penn State with a degree in integrative arts, which is a combination of two different types of arts. So for me, that was sculpture and it was theatrical makeup. I really like makeup and I really like the theatrical side of it. And I really liked theater in general, but I also was making sculptures on the side because, and I still am, I'm an artist and I love to make with my hands. And so I left school, I graduated, and I didn't get a job doing those things. And I worked in many different industries bouncing around, and finally I sort of like found a happy place in the gaming industry for a little bit. And then I was working at a desk and it was like my passion and I loved it, but I also had this part of me that was like, you're an artist, you want to work on art. And I actually reached back out to one of my old professors at Penn State and I was talking to her and saying, hey, you know me as an artist and as a theater person, I really want to go to grad school, I really want to pursue more art. Do you like, what would you recommend? And she said, are you into puppets? And I went, I don't know what that means. She said, think about puppets. You should look at what that scope of puppetry means. Here's this cool school that does it. I found out later that a different puppet arts graduate, Mark Blashford, who also came from Penn State, was told to go here by the same woman. So she is really looking out for the UConn Puppet Arts Program at Penn State. So go figure. But that's sort of how I found my way here. And then once I kind of dove into the world of puppetry, I started to realize, oh my God, I could bring my sculptures to life. Yes. So I've done that ever since. I'm surrounded by two of them. I know, I brought some friends to the party. I think I saw a question come up about the coolest thing that we've ever gotten to perform or build. And for me, that also ties into the puppets that I wanted to show off. So I'm going to bounce that back to you first, and then I'll take it back and I'll talk a little bit about the puppets that I brought today.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I think answering mine, we might have to rewind back to when you were talking about what could be puppetry and how I have a bit of experience with Bob's Discount Furniture. A couple of summers ago, I got to do a very exciting internship with them for the whole summer. I don't know how many of you know Bob's, but there's this guy Bob, and he, back in the 80s, like the person Bob was their big sort of mascot guy. He was in all their commercials. And as he was getting older and was like wanting to retire, they sort of phased him out. And then phased in like a puppet version of him. So what they currently do is they have 3 separate stop motion puppets with, I think it's 2 or 3 separate stop motion animators who will all go, and their whole job is just filming all these stop motion skits with this little Bob puppet to make most of the commercials. And then some of the other commercials, they have this sort of, it's like a live puppet where they take 3 different puppeteers that are like moving it live in real time. And then they'll superimpose like stop motion facial animation on top of that. So I got to not only do a little bit of performance with that puppet, but also work in their fabrication department and help like build other versions of Bobs and like make props and a lot of other really fun stuff.
Oh, that's cool, actually. That's really cool.
Yeah, it was really exciting. I learned a lot.
I think for me, I'm thinking about what's the coolest thing that I've gotten to perform or build. I was looking back in my own life because I'd never made puppets before here, and I'm graduating, and I was like, what are the things that I'm the most proud of? And I was sort of like going through and like thinking about the most exciting things. And I think one of the things that was not really puppetry related, I learned to weld here, which that's crazy. So I love that I can weld now. But I also was thinking about what's the coolest thing I built here? And I was like, my marionette. I made a marionette here. And that's something I would have never, ever expected. So I actually brought my marionette here. I'm a little obsessed with making stands for my puppets, which is why they're both posed really nicely. So I'm going to pick her off of her stand and show you a little bit. And then maybe, because I realized both me and Tracy have bird marionettes that we made for the same class in different years. Maybe our birds can meet each other digitally. So I do want to introduce, this is my character, Vera, who is a showgirl vulture. And she is entirely hand carved out of wood. I'm gonna lower her here a little bit, goodbye Vera, to show you her control rod. So her legs are on this bar that rocks back and forth. Her front arms or her wings are kind of on this string, this separate piece here that detaches, so she can sort of like, this is her default pose, but I can move this around and have her pose otherwise, or I can, throw it on the ground. She has this bar here, just holds her shoulders and keeps her stable. She does have a butt bar for her booty so that she can shake it. Her head is on this lower one here, so if she's standing on the ground, I can control her head because she kind of has this shape by default, so I can use this to like, maybe she's surprised and looking around. And I do have a trick to her because I'd never made one of these before, so why not jump 0 to 100, right? And so she has these 2 strings in the back here. It's one continuous string along these eyelets. I'm trying to get her close here, and so her trick is that she can put her hands on her hips. So if I show you this here she goes.
Ooh.
So that was a really difficult feat to figure out how to do in wood. She also, because she is a little bit of like a can girl, she has 2 different strings on her arm, or on her legs, I mean. So she can kick, but she can also put it all out. So I had a lot of fun designing her, and I think she probably would love to meet your bird marionette. But this was definitely the coolest puppet that I've gotten to make here. See, I haven't really performed too many puppets here other than my own. So I think I am really proud of my own puppets that I performed. I'm really the most proud of performing as my cat Cleo, who I just did a BIMP panel about. So I will not go into detail on Cleo here. But yes, I want to see your bird marionette now, Tracy.
Oh yeah, so this is Frank Mallard. He's definitely not as polished as Abby's because I had to build him during this semester. So the first half of him, more of his design and his conception and some pre-planning, I got to do entirely at school. And the rest of the carving and the like physical building and the painting, I did all from home, which was a little tricky, but it was a really exciting challenge to learn, okay, it has to be a little simpler, but I still can make a working puppet out of my house, which is kind of crazy to think about. So he is sort of similar to Abby, where he's got the basic leg joints. and the whole standard marionette rundown, a lot of similar
Oh,
joints that she has.
yeah. Mhm.
My control is a little bit simpler. This is what most people like to call an airplane control. So there is the same front bar, but instead of controlling his arms, this will control his legs. So these make his little
Ah,
feet waddle.
cool.
I have this string in the front here. You can't really see it well, but this is one continuous string that both of his hands are on. So I can lift one and move it around, or I can pull this one down and it'll lift his other hand up. So like I can lift this hand with that
Okay.
string, and then I can pull that string down, and then his other hand will go up.
Very nice.
Yeah, I mean, outside of that, he's pretty simple, and I definitely want to work on him more. But I think he's a pretty fun guy.
Hey, this was a weird semester for everybody. I'd be in the same boat if mine wasn't 2 years older than he is. I'm looking over, so we have a question about like sports. Are there superstars of puppetry that either of us follow? Tracy, do you have any superstars that you follow?
Oh yeah. So I think the biggest, I would say, quote unquote, superstar would probably be, I am a diehard Ronnie Burkett fan. I follow his Instagram account. He has been making marionettes for years. He's this Canadian-based puppeteer, and he has these really beautiful, intricate marionettes. He also has these like little hand puppets that have like padding in certain areas, so they look more realistic. I'm obsessed with it.
Ooh.
That's my main one. But I think the other thing I really like doing outside of that is there's a lot of different like kids and teens on all these little different corners of like Facebook and Instagram and
Yeah.
the
Oh
internet
yeah.
that get really into making puppets. And like I love seeing what they're figuring out just from like what they're finding online with no sort of like quote unquote formal training.
Oh
or
yeah.
anything.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of I have a lot of puppeteers that I found out about through this program, and a lot from past and present. But I was going to say similar. I'm actually really impressed when I look up like amateur puppet builders. Not that I'm not an amateur, because I absolutely am an amateur, but people who didn't have that, you know, aren't getting puppet lessons, who are just looking at the things around their home and going, that looks like a thing I can use. And that to me is like so innovative, and I'm inspired by that. You showed me somebody yesterday who used Mardi Gras beads for arms, and like I would have never imagined that. And so I love kind of, I think there's, you know, the saying that like artists steal from each other and like share ideas, and I see other people and I take their ideas in the same way that I've had other people go, oh my gosh, I never would have thought to use something in a way that you did. I'm going to use the thing you did. Like all of these ideas are free, and like I'm happy to like share and take, and I love that. But all of my the puppeteers that I came in looking up to were all people that were making animatronics, and were all people that had designed animatronics, because before I learned about like what is puppetry, I had always loved animatronics otherwise. And so to figure out that they were puppetry, I was like, oh, okay, so then those can be my favorite puppets. Cool. So it's kind of worked out, right?
Yeah.
So Tracy, is when you joined the puppetry community, is there anything that you didn't expect that you learned or found out about?
Ooh, that's a tough question.
I know.
I think I really didn't know what to expect when I first joined it. And I think the thing that I was most pleasantly surprised by was like how endlessly like kind and sharing with information and like helpful so many puppeteers are. Like touching on Abby of being able to like know artists steal ideas all the time. I've found that a lot of artists do, but when you're looking into, I don't want to say more traditional art, but that if you're into other art forms, it's a little bit harder to get that give and take. But like any puppet show I've gone to, any puppeteer I've talked to, I can just walk right up off the street and say, hey, how'd you build this joint? Hey, where do you buy your materials? Or like any questions I have, and they're more than happy to answer.
Oh my God. I was thinking the same exact thing was that number one, I didn't know like what the scope of puppetry was. So I might have been one of those people that came in and I was like, Muppets, Lion King, and then like, whoa, look what else counts. But I'm just impressed by the same thing, is that everybody is, and I found this more than any other like art form and artist that I've kind of like mingled with, but like everybody is so willing to share what they know and is so willing to exchange like any info. I really have only met one person who is very secretive and who is very like, don't look. Everybody else has been, you know, I've seen shows actually at the Ballard. I would see shows and then afterwards I would kind of stick around and be like, hey, great show. And, you know, the Frogtown Mountain Puppeteers would go, okay, come here. What do you want to see? I can show you anything. They would show you how they made things. I would go, ooh, that's a cool puppet. And they'd go, oh, we made it this way. And they list out the entire way that they built everything. Like, it's wild to me. People are so willing to share. But then in the same way, if you had time and you asked me exactly how I made any of my puppets, I'll tell you. Like,
oh yeah, I would tell anyone anything.
So I really was totally blown away by the kindness and the willingness to share and collaborate on things. I love it. It's really friendly and nice.
Oh, here's a do either of you have a dream show or dream puppet you'd like to work on or produce one day?
Yes. Yes. I think you probably do too. I have an interest in haunted houses, and I have an interest in bringing puppetry more into that. I think about like, I don't know, human characters and human actors are awesome in haunted houses, but like puppets can really distort a figure that like you're used to create something that like is totally freaky and that you've never seen before. So my dream would be some kind of puppetry haunted house thing. I have a lot of ideas. I have a lot of inspiration for things that I would love to do. Do not have the funding or the space for it, but I have a lot of ideas. But I really, really do want to bring puppets and horror experiences and smash them together and see what happens. What about you, Tracy? What's your dream show or puppet?
I'm not in exactly the same vein. I feel like the quote unquote dream that I have is a little bit vaguer and kind of wider. I've been, obviously from being home, on the internet a lot lately, and I've seen so much of, especially like with different amateur puppeteers, but also professionals, just everybody transferring their work to online and going, okay, now we have to take sort of all of our live shows into this digital world. And I don't know what exactly I would do for it, but I really like the idea of trying to sort of push that digital and push that film, because I think it adds a lot of accessibility for people who aren't already thinking about puppetry. And I know that stop motion is a really big thread, but I really want to do like a live puppet film and sort of bring back like live filmed puppetry and like get that back up on the, like, outside of just a sort of hand and mouth Muppet, like getting back into that like live filmed puppets and seeing where that can go.
That would be really cool. I would love to see that in your style. That would be really cool. Let's see. I think so. Both of us do have social media. Maybe it's best to share that afterwards. People specifically want to follow us. We can post links to those afterwards because both of us are graduating. I don't know if I'm allowed to spoil the magic that this is our last live performance. I know, wherever we're looking in Zoom. I filmed a few more workshops, so I might not be live, but you will see again. But this is our last live one where we're actually like physically responding. So maybe afterwards would be a good place to share where you can find either of us if you're interested in both of us hosting UCONN. So I'd be totally happy to share that afterwards. Somebody, older candidate interested in the MFA program. I will not call out names, but you are probably not the oldest person that I've seen go through this program. I have seen every age group go through this program. I have seen older and younger people as graduates who I was talking to after the fact, or as people who I've like worked with. It's, I think in the undergrad program, like everybody is a similar age for the most part. Obviously there's non-traditional undergrads, and that's awesome that you found us. for MFA, I would say, and it really depends on who you are and what you know about puppetry already and what you're looking to do with it, is number one, it does not hurt to get information. So email, get information, get all of the information, ask people who you can find. Before I came here, I had gone on to Facebook and I found a UCONN Puppet graduates Facebook group, and I just picked random people from it and I sent them messages and I said, hey, I saw that you graduated from here. I'm thinking about it. Could you talk to me about your experiences? And so gather information. Email. Things are a little crazy with the university through, I'm sure, everything that you know is happening with the virus, but get information, go to the website, send emails, ask for the brochure to be sent to you, like gather as much information as you can, because it doesn't hurt to get all of the information and then make a decision. Like, you asking for information doesn't mean that you're committing 100%. So get the information, and then from there, kind of think about your goal, right? Like, I would say, think about what do you want to do? Is it that you just want to learn how to make puppets? Is it that you have a really specific idea for a show that you want to bring to life? Is it that you're really interested in performance, not making? Like, think about your goals and write them down. If it helps me to write things down, if it helps you to write it down, get it down, and talk to head of the program or any representative and ask, like, would this be the place to accomplish this? And most of the time the answer will be yes. I think, Tracy, you can agree that this program is very not open-ended, but it really does help support each individual artist. So if I come in here and I want to make a certain type of puppet, which I did, I was very specific on what I wanted to make. That came true, like that happened. But then our classmates who might have totally different dreams and goals, like their needs were being met as well. So I think as long as you're able to advocate for what you're looking for, even if that's just, I want to learn everything, which is like totally awesome too. But also don't be afraid that you're too late, because you're not. You're not too late at all. Anytime that you realize like that you want to try something is like perfect. That's the perfect time. I totally support you getting more information and figuring out. And they really do, not that, it's too tough to get in as somebody who doesn't know puppetry, because they're not looking for skill that you already have. They're looking for what type of personality you are and your drive. And, I came in and I said, look, I've never made a puppet. Here's my portfolio of the artwork I have made, and here's my goals. And they'll have a conversation with you about what you can accomplish in the program. I don't know how BFA was different. You can speak to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think BFA is pretty similar, and a lot of the advice you've given applies to all that. I'm seeing that there's also the question of also, could you look into the online certificate program?
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I personally haven't taken the online classes, but they're mainly all run by a faculty member that Abby and I are both close with, Paul Spirito. I've seen a little bit of some of the work that he's taught with them. The online classes are fantastic. I've again only seen really little bits and talked to him in passing, but it's a really similar experience. And if you're not necessarily looking for that specific MFA degree for whatever you need that for, and you're just looking to learn more about puppetry, then it's a really good way to just take a couple classes and get some information. In fact, I've heard that most of the students on there aren't going for the certificate. They're just like, oh, I'll take a couple classes, learn some more puppetry-based skills for whatever I need in my life.
Absolutely. And it's a good way to sort of dip your toes in without, jumping cannonball in. And also, if you know that you're interested in puppetry and you're not already involved in, look for local puppetry groups and guilds in your area. I was totally not aware of the community of puppeteers that are everywhere. And you can find them, and they meet, monthly or bi-monthly or whatever, whenever they're meeting. And that's the best way to sort of just meet with, I found an online group that I'm a part of now, and we talk about puppetry, and they're located all over the world. And I'm going, oh my God, like, I didn't know that this existed. And it's just people, so find other puppetry groups to talk to as well. If you're, and as we already established, puppeteers are very friendly. So if you come in and say, hey, I'm new, but I'm open to learn, you're going to get blown away by responses. Like people are going to want to share with you so much because we want to help, because nobody is born a master of puppetry. You know, everybody starts at the ground and builds themselves up. So it's be positive, hang in there, like look for groups, get information, and follow that. Like if that's your desire, like follow that. It's, you know what you want as an artist. Taking a sip now. I think both of us have also prepared, as more questions are coming in, we will answer them, but I also wanted to take a second to show off some of our favorite materials. Just because I think both of us prepared some of our favorite things that we want to show off. So Tracy, do you want to talk about some of your favorite materials that both you as a puppeteer use, and that, you know, maybe puppeteers as a whole like to use?
Yeah, so this past semester, I took a costume crafts class. And while costume crafts isn't specifically puppetry, I know Abby's taken this class before too. I did pick up on a lot of different materials and tools and tactics that I wouldn't necessarily think of. And one of my favorite things from that was this material called Fall Shape. And it's really interesting. There's two different thicknesses. This one is 300 and this one is 600. So you can kind of see the 600 is like twice as thick. And it's this fabric material that you can cut with fabric scissors, you can sew. It works basically the same as any other fabric you'll find. Okay. But if you take like an iron to it, or some sort, not a heat gun, yeah, like an iron, or I think a hair dryer, but I'm pretty sure that's not strong enough, but like an iron or a steamer, you can get it to sort of, like you'll see on this curve here, like it gets firmer and it'll really hold its shape, no matter, like I can bend it in half and then it'll just go right back. So a lot of people will use it for like puppet bodies, and if you want to make like headwear or just something to sort of like solidify a piece that you're working on. And it's one of my favorite things to work with.
I love Fall Shape. I love that you brought it up, because that was a material that I had never worked with before. I've worked with other, I think Fall Shape falls under thermoplastic, and like I've worked with other thermoplastics like Warbler before, but I had never touched Fall Shape, and I'm obsessed with it. Like it just creates such a cool form that like holds its form. Like I think when I was coming from sculpture, I know how to make things like in clay that are hard, but I didn't know how to make things that are soft but hold their shape. So Fall Shape is a really cool way to do that. So is foam. I love foam. Yes. I've got some foam pieces here. I've got two different foams in my hands. First up is this upholstery foam that you can get at Joann's or like any craft store. I'm showing this up close so that you can see the texture of it. If you've never worked with this foam before, this is probably what like seat cushions are. If you've never worked with this foam before, it's a little cheaper to get than this type of foam that I have in my other hand. It is softer. I'll say a little less strong, but if you're just like making puppets for fun and not for, you know, an entire TV 4 seasons or something, like this is fine. I also have this foam here, and as you can see, it's a little bit more, it's got some more bubbles in it. Like it's a little bit more what's called open cell, sometimes called reticulated or open cell foam. So this foam is a little bit stronger. It's a little sturdier. I forget the exact brand name that this one is. I think it's called something like Super Dry or Fast Dry. It's meant to be like a seat cushion that can dry really quick if it gets rained on. So I personally like using this because I have it more, but they're just two different types of foam. I think there aren't really any, I'll say, puppet stores for buying supplies, though that's not true because there are certainly websites like Puppet Pelts, which is a puppet supply store. But a lot of puppeteering I found is just looking around your apartment and going, what do I have? I've got a ping pong ball. Okay, let's make it some ice. I've got a sock. Okay, let's make it a puppet. I have you know, some gemstones, let's make it braces. Like there's no easy puppet emporium that I can walk down the aisle and pick out like puppet tongue, puppet eyes, puppet this, you know? So it's, I like being able to use, obviously these are foam, which is a common thing that puppeteers use, but it's funny that both of these have like seat cushion applications outside of this. So I love foam. I love plastic too. I briefly showed off a mask that I made in another workshop that I did. I'm gonna move my sock puppet out of the way. So this is cast plastic. This is hollow. I originally made a sculpture in clay that I made a mold of, and I also have the mold here. So I'll show you that mold that I cast in silicone rubber. This specific kind is called a rebound because you can brush it up over a sculpture. So just to show a little bit of molding and casting, which is my other really big passion here in puppet school. Okay, throwing this down. Puppetry does encompass so many different art forms. I think that's what's so cool too, is that everybody at the Puppet Arts Program is a puppeteer, but everybody has like a vastly different art style and things that they're inspired by. Tracy, is there anything else that you're inspired by?
Oh gosh. I definitely do follow a lot of the studio MFA program. We have a couple of museum assistants who have worked more in studio art, and that's led me to follow a bunch of different more like visual artists, painters, sculptors, that other sort of basic thing. And that's really brought me a lot of different inspiration from just different more like quote unquote, I don't want to say traditional, but I guess like other art movements.
Yeah, other art movements. Okay. I think if you go back far enough in my life when I was just diving into sculpture, the thing that like really inspired me was actually like looking at Disney specifically, but you know, there are animatronics and cartoon characters everywhere, but specifically looking at animatronics and like really expressive character art by artists that were not only designing for the Disney movies, but designing like animatronics. Like I think the biggest name is Mark Davis. And if I didn't look up, and if the internet had been invented just a few years later, I would have missed my window to use Google Images to find Mark Davis artwork that I copied. But a lot of the things that are really prevalent in my artwork, which are silly to say, but like the very specific smile lines, Vera's got them. And that very specific sculpture is because I was like obsessed with copying that art style and then figuring out like once I copied it, like, okay, how can I make this Abby specific now? Like, and turning them into that way. So I think that all of my characters tend to side on the cartoony side because I'm so inspired by that, the vintage rides and such. And like, I'm like, who other artists am I inspired by? I'd want to give names because I didn't really do a good job of that with the Puppeteers. Rolly Crump is another one who's really dynamic, and like colors and like use of lines is another artist that really inspired me in then, but still is like close to my heart, and still like I see my work and I can see the inspiration through that. So I want to drop more like Disney names, and I'm like, stop, they get it. Is there any other questions we want to go over before we sign off for today? I'm looking over our list. We hit almost everything that we had talked about.
Yeah, I think
been asked before.
I think we might have hit everything. I would say the only other thing we could do as a way to sign off is if you want to, if there's any website or way to follow you handles that you want to drop before we go.
Sure, I'll drop that. I also, of course, can type that physically in a comment. My name is Abby Bosley. You probably have read that before on this website. It might even be under me in my Zoom name. But my website is abbybosley.com. I purchased it several years ago. I've been very happy to hold on to that and keep it updated with my artwork. And now that I'm going to be out of school and out of everything else, I'm going to update it with all of the stuff from the past year. So of course you can hit abbybosley.com, and that also, my website will have links to all of my other social media presences. So I'd rather give you that site and tell you to find whichever one you want to follow. So if you prefer Instagram, you can find it through that website. But you can just type my name in, Abby. That's ABBY. I'm not an IE or an EY. I'm just a Y, Bosley.com. What about you, Tracy? What do you got?
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing. My website is tracyabecker.com, but also I think for me and Abby, if you just Google Tracy Becker Puppets or Abby Bosley Puppets, you'll find some sort of social media or website that links to us within.
You will get to us eventually, but yeah, but both of our names, Abby Bosley or tracyabecker.com, will also get you to our tree of social media that we keep. So it's exciting though. Thank you for wanting to share and keep up with us. Thank you.
Yeah. And with that, I think we're all set. And
I know. Thanks for joining us for our last official BIMP workshop here that we're running. Of course, you can see me do other things online soon because my recorded videos will go online sometime over the summer. But thanks for joining us for this one. If you have any other questions, I'm sure you can write those in the comments and somebody from BIMP, or maybe there'll be a round 2 of this with a different round of puppeteers. That would be kind of exciting too. I love getting to hear everybody's side of the stories. So maybe that'll happen. Maybe, so keep those questions handy for when that does. But otherwise, thanks for joining us today. Happy Friday. We made it to Friday, right?
woo!
Happy Friday. Of course, thanks for joining us. We're always super happy to see you here at the Mallard Institute Museum of Puppetry Facebook page. Thanks so much, though. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Have a puppet-tastic weekend.
Puppet-tastic weekend. I love it. See you soon. Bye.